Karen yelled, "Speak English. I'm her immigration lawyer." The melodic cadence of Vietnamese filled the sun-drenched corner of the daily grind. Lena sat comfortably in a plush armchair, a steaming cup of jasmine tea beside her, her voice flowing smoothly over the phone. She was speaking to Mrs. Nguyen, a longtime client whose family reunification case had finally reached its crucial stage. Lena's fluency in Vietnamese, her mother tongue, was not just a convenience. It was a vital tool in her work as an immigration lawyer, allowing her to connect with her diverse clientele on a deeper, more personal level, building trust and understanding that transcended language barriers. Lena possessed a sharp intellect and an unwavering dedication to justice, qualities that had propelled her to the top of her field. Her small but thriving law practice specialized in immigration law, a complex and often emotionally charged area where she fought tirelessly to help individuals navigate the labyrinthine legal system, offering them a chance at a new life in America. She understood firsthand the challenges and hopes of immigrants, her own family having arrived in the States when she was a child, carrying with them little more than dreams and determination. Outside the demanding world of legal briefs and courtroom battles, Lena cherished moments of quiet normalcy. Weekends were for leisurely walks in the park, exploring new restaurants with friends, and indulging in her passion for photography. She found solace in the simple rhythms of everyday life, a grounding force that balanced the often high stakes of her profession. Her multilingualism, a source of professional strength, was also a personal joy, allowing her to connect with a wider world of culture and perspective. The conversation with Mrs. Nguyen continued, Lena patiently explaining the next steps in the process, her tone empathetic and reassuring. The cafe buzzed around her, a typical Saturday morning symphony of clanking mugs, chattering voices, and the hiss of the espresso machine. Lena was adept at tuning out the ambient noise, her focus entirely on her client's concerns. Suddenly a voice, sharp and laced with an unmistakable air of entitlement, cut through the cafe's gentle hum. "Excuse me! Excuse me, are you even in America? This is America. We speak English here." Lena's brow furrowed slightly. She paused her conversation, a flicker of annoyance disrupting her professional calm. The voice, laced with prejudice, was directed squarely at her. She glanced up to see the source of the outburst. Standing a few feet away, near the pastry display, was a woman who seemed to have stepped straight out of a suburban stereotype. Her blonde hair was styled in a rigid, helmet-like fashion, her designer sunglasses perched on her nose even indoors, and her expression was a mask of indignant displeasure. She clutched a small, yappy dog in a bejeweled carrier and radiated an aura of self-importance. The woman, whom Lena instinctively categorized as a HOA Karen type, was staring directly at her, her lips pursed in disapproval. Several other patrons in the cafe had turned to look, a mixture of curiosity and discomfort on their faces. Lena, though taken aback by the blatant rudeness, maintained her composure. Years of dealing with difficult opposing counsel and stressed clients had honed her ability to remain calm under pressure. She offered the woman a polite but neutral glance and then turned back to her phone call, intending to continue her conversation. However, HOA Karen was not so easily deterred. Her voice rose in volume, drawing more attention. "I said speak English. This is America. If you want to talk in your foreign language, go back to where you came from." The xenophobic slur hung in the air, thick with ignorance and hostility. Lena felt a surge of anger, a protective instinct rising within her, not just for herself, but for all the immigrants she represented. Individuals who had come to America seeking opportunity and a better life, only to face such unwarranted prejudice. Despite the internal turmoil, Lena kept her voice even as she spoke calmly into the phone. "Mrs. Nguyen, please hold for one moment." She then lowered her phone slightly and turned her attention fully to the irate woman. "Excuse me," Lena said in perfect, unaccented English, her tone polite but firm. "I am speaking to my client, and this is also America, a country built by immigrants where many languages are spoken every day." Hoa Karen seemed momentarily taken aback by Lena's flawless English and her calm, assertive response. Her face flushed slightly, but her entitled indignation quickly resurfaced. "Well, you should still be speaking English in public. It's just common courtesy. People can't understand you." She gestured dismissively with her hand, nearly jostling her yappy dog. Lena raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Is my conversation bothering you? Yes, it is. It's rude. I have no idea what you're saying. You could be talking about me. Karen's voice had risen again, attracting more attention from the other cafe patrons, some of whom were now openly glaring at her. Lena sighed inwardly. Arguing with someone so entrenched in their prejudice seemed futile. She decided to disengage. I apologize if my conversation was disturbing you, Lena said, her tone carefully neutral. She then turned back to her phone. Mrs. Nguyen, I'm so sorry for the interruption. Where were we? Karen, however, had the last word, muttering loudly under her breath as she finally moved towards the pastry counter, her yappy dog yipping in agreement. Disgusting. They come here and don't even bother to learn the language. Lena shook her head slightly, a mixture of sadness and frustration washing over her. Such blatant ignorance was disheartening, especially in a country that prided itself on its diversity. She finished her phone call with Mrs. Nguyen, her earlier calm slightly disrupted by the unpleasant encounter. She made a mental note of the woman's distinctive appearance, the rigid blonde hair, the designer sunglasses, the yappy dog, an unfortunate reminder of the prejudice that still existed in the world she navigated daily. Later that week, Lena received a new case inquiry through her website. The name on the form was Karen Miller. It was a fairly complex immigration issue involving a visa renewal with some significant complications. Lena's paralegal, Ben, had scheduled an initial consultation. When Karen Miller walked into Lena's office a few days later, Lena's composure wavered for only a fraction of a second. There she was, the rigid blonde hair, the designer sunglasses, now perched on her head indoors once again. The same aura of entitled displeasure, although slightly subdued by the obvious stress of her legal predicament. And nestled in a familiar bejeweled carrier was the yappy dog. Recognition dawned in Karen's eyes as well, a flicker of something akin to unease crossing her face as she took in Lena's professional attire and the diplomas adorning the office walls. The memory of the rude outburst in the daily grind seemed to resurface, a silent, awkward tension filling the room. The stage was set for a dramatic and ironic unfolding of events, where the woman who had so rudely demanded, "Speak English," Tamarsirinamom, a freshie would soon be entrusting her future in America to a lawyer who spoke many languages, including the one she had so disdainfully dismissed. The initial awkwardness in Lena's office hung heavy in the air, a silent acknowledgement of the unpleasant encounter at the daily grind. Karen Miller, despite the obvious anxiety etched on her face regarding her immigration issues, still carried a faint air of entitlement, a subtle expectation of deference that Lena found both familiar and increasingly ironic. Ben, Lena's efficient paralegal, had already gathered some preliminary information from Karen. Her visa, a non-immigrant work visa, was up for renewal, but there were complications. A recent change in her employment status, coupled with some inconsistencies in previous filings, had raised red flags with immigration services. The situation was serious, potentially leading to the denial of her renewal and deportation. During the initial consultation, Karen laid out her predicament, her tone a mixture of frustration and a sense of disbelief that she was facing such bureaucratic hurdles. She spoke rapidly, occasionally interrupting Lena with demands for immediate solutions. The underlying assumption that her case should be expedited and resolved in her favor was palpable. Lena listened patiently, her professional demeanor unwavering. She asked pointed questions, delving into the specifics of her employment history and the discrepancies in her filings. Karen's answers were often vague and dismissive, as if the details were beneath her consideration. Honestly, Karen huffed at one point, adjusting her designer sunglasses, it's all just paperwork, isn't it? Can't you just make it go away? Lena's inner eyebrow arched, but her outward expression remained neutral. Immigration law is complex, Miss Miller. Accuracy and thoroughness are crucial. We need to understand the specifics to build a strong case. Free hit. As the consultation progressed, Lena noticed Karen's occasional glances around the office, her eyes lingering on Lena's diplomas and the framed certificates showcasing her fluency in multiple languages. There was a flicker of something in her gaze, perhaps a dawning recognition of Lena's professional standing, a stark contrast to the dismissive way she had treated her in the cafe. The irony of the situation was not lost on Lena. The woman who had so vehemently insisted on English-only communication was now entrusting her very future in America to a lawyer who fluently spoke at least one of the foreign languages she so openly disdained. Over the next few days, Karen's legal troubles became more acute. She received a formal notice of intent to deny her visa renewal, outlining the specific issues and giving her a limited time to respond. Panic began to set in. The entitled facade started to crack, revealing a growing desperation. Karen bombarded Lena's office with phone calls, her tone shifting from demanding to increasingly frantic. She needed answers, she needed solutions, and she needed them immediately. Lena and Ben worked diligently on Karen's case, meticulously reviewing her documents and researching the relevant immigration laws and precedents. The inconsistencies in her filings were significant, requiring a careful and strategic approach to address the concerns of immigration services. During one particularly tense phone call, Karen's frustration boiled over. "I don't understand why this is taking so long," she snapped. "Can't you just call someone? Pull some strings? I shouldn't have to deal with this." Lena's patience, usually formidable, began to wear thin. The echoes of "speak English" in the cafe resonated in her mind. She took a deep breath, maintaining her professional tone. "Ms. Miller, we are working as efficiently and effectively as possible within the legal framework. There are no strings to pull. We need to build a solid legal argument based on the facts and the law." As Karen's desperation grew, she began to interview other immigration lawyers, seeking a second opinion or perhaps someone who would offer her a quicker, easier fix. However, the complexities of her case and the inconsistencies in her records presented a significant challenge for any attorney. Several other lawyers gave her a blunt assessment of her situation, emphasizing the seriousness of the notice of intent to deny. Unbeknownst to Karen, her search for alternative legal counsel only reinforced Lena's expertise and reputation. Several of the lawyers she consulted were colleagues of Lena's, and word of Karen's difficult demeanor and the specifics of her case reached Lena through professional circles. The irony of Karen's predicament, desperately seeking help from the very community she had so openly disdained, was becoming a quiet source of grim amusement within Lena's firm. During one of Karen's increasingly frequent office visits, she was kept waiting briefly as Lena dealt with an urgent client matter. Karen paced impatiently in the waiting room, muttering under her breath about wasted time. Lena's receptionist, a kind and multilingual young woman named Sophia, offered Karen a magazine. "Thank you," Karen said curtly, barely glancing at it. Then she overheard Sophia speaking to another client on the phone in fluent Spanish, offering reassurance and scheduling an appointment. A flicker of recognition crossed Karen's face, a momentary pause in her agitated pacing. She looked at Sophia with a newfound curiosity, a subtle shift in her usual dismissive demeanor. As Lena finally called Karen into her office, the tension in the air was palpable. Karen's carefully constructed wall of entitlement was crumbling under the weight of her precarious legal situation. She was scared, and her desperation was beginning to override her ingrained prejudices. "Ms. Miller," Lena began, her voice calm but firm, "we have reviewed the notice of intent to deny, and the inconsistencies in your previous filings are significant. We need to prepare a comprehensive and compelling response, addressing each of the concerns raised by immigration services. This will require your full cooperation and complete honesty." Karen nodded quickly, her usual demanding tone replaced by a nervous eagerness to please. Yes, of course. Whatever you need. Just, please, help me." The power dynamic had begun to shift. Karen, once so quick to judge and demand, was now completely reliant on Lena's expertise and willingness to help her navigate the very system she had implicitly denigrated through her xenophobic outburst. Lena, ever the professional, focused on the legal task at hand, but the memory of "speak English" lingered, a stark reminder of the prejudice she was now being asked to overcome to help her client. The conflict was no longer just about immigration law. It was about the unexpected collision of prejudice and necessity. The shift in power dynamics within Lena's office was palpable. The entitled bluster that had initially characterized Karen Miller had largely dissipated, replaced by a nervous anxiety and a desperate reliance on Lena's expertise. The weight of the notice of intent to deny hung over Karen like a dark cloud. the threat of deportation a stark and terrifying reality that had finally pierced through her privileged existence. Lena and Ben worked tirelessly on Karen's case, meticulously assembling a comprehensive response to the immigration services. They painstakingly gathered documentation, clarified inconsistencies, and constructed a legal argument aimed at demonstrating Karen's eligibility for visa renewal despite the earlier issues. Karen, for the most part, cooperated fully, providing the requested information with a newfound urgency and a distinct lack of her previous dismissive attitude. During one particularly late evening in the office, as Lena reviewed a crucial piece of evidence, Karen sat across from her usual immaculate appearance slightly disheveled, her designer sunglasses abandoned on the corner of the desk. The silence in the room was heavy, punctuated only by the soft hum of the computer and the occasional sigh from Ben. "Lena," Karen said softly, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "Thank you for doing this." Lena looked up, her expression neutral. "It's my job, Miss Miller. You are my client." Karen hesitated for a moment, then continued, her gaze fixed on her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I haven't always been very open-minded about other cultures and languages." Lena remained silent, allowing Karen to continue at her own pace. I, I guess, living in my own little bubble, I never really thought about what it must be like to come to a new country, to speak a different language." Karen's voice trailed off, a hint of shame coloring her tone. The irony of this confession, coming from the woman who had so rudely accosted Lena in the coffee shop, was almost comical, were the stakes not so high. Lena simply nodded slowly, acknowledging Karen's tentative step toward self-awareness. The day of the final submission of Karen's response arrived, marked by a palpable tension in Lena's office. Every document had been double-checked, every argument carefully crafted. Lena felt a sense of professional satisfaction in the thoroughness of their work, regardless of her personal feelings towards her client. The waiting period that followed was agonizing for Karen. The confident exterior she had so carefully cultivated had crumbled, replaced by a raw vulnerability. She called Lena's office frequently, her voice filled with anxiety, seeking reassurance that everything would be all right. Lena, while maintaining a professional distance, offered what comfort she could, reminding Karen of the strength of their response and the unpredictable nature of immigration decisions. The power dynamic had shifted so completely that Karen now seemed to seek Lena's approval, her validation. Then came the day of the interview at the Immigration Services office. Lena accompanied Karen, providing legal counsel and support. In the sterile, bureaucratic environment, Karen appeared small and surprisingly meek, a stark contrast to the assertive woman Lena had encountered in the coffee shop. The interview itself was tense and thorough. The immigration officer questioned Karen extensively about the inconsistencies in her records and her employment history. Lena intervened strategically, clarifying points of law and ensuring Karen's rights were protected. Throughout the process, Karen remained subdued, her earlier entitlement nowhere to be seen. As they left the Immigration Services office, the outcome of the interview hanging in the balance, Karen turned to Lena, her eyes filled with a desperate plea. "What do you think?" Lena offered a measured response. "We presented a strong case, Miss Miller. However, the final decision rests with the Immigration Services. We will need to wait." The waiting stretched into weeks, each day filled with mounting anxiety for Karen. She continued to contact Lena's office, her calls becoming increasingly frantic. The possibility of being forced to leave the country, to face the consequences of her past oversights, had finally shaken her to her core. Then one afternoon, Lena received the notification. The decision on Karen Miller's visa renewal had been reached. Ben rushed into Lena's office, his face a mixture of relief and a certain ironic amusement. "Lena," he said, handing her the official document, "they approved it. The visa renewal has been granted." Lena felt a sense of professional satisfaction. They had successfully navigated a complex legal challenge for their client. She instructed Ben to inform Karen immediately. Karen's reaction was one of overwhelming relief, bordering on hysteria. She rushed to Lena's office, tears streaming down her face, her words tumbling out in a torrent of gratitude. "Lena! Oh, Lena, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done without you." The contrast between Karen's current emotional state and her earlier dismissive behavior was stark. Lena simply nodded, maintaining her professional composure. "You're welcome, Ms. Miller. We are glad we could assist you." As Karen's initial relief subsided, a flicker of something else crossed her face. A dawning recognition of the profound irony of the situation. She looked at Lena, her eyes searching. "Lena," she began hesitantly, "that day, in the coffee shop, when I, when I said those awful things to you." The moment of the climax had arrived. The unspoken tension, the weight of Karen's prejudice, and Lena's professional silence finally came to the forefront. The bright afternoon sun streamed through Lena's office window, illuminating the awkwardness of the encounter. Lena met Karen's gaze steadily, her expression calm but holding a subtle undercurrent of knowing. "Yes, Miss Miller, I remember." Karen's face flushed with shame. I, I was so rude, so ignorant. I had no right." Her voice trailed off, choked with emotion. Lena allowed a brief pause, letting the weight of Karen's words hang in the air. "No, Ms. Miller, you did not. Your assumptions were based on prejudice and a lack of understanding of the diverse fabric of this country." Karen's eyes filled with fresh tears. "And then you ended up being my lawyer, the person who saved me." The irony of the situation was clearly not lost on her. Lena nodded slowly. "Life has a way of presenting unexpected turns, Ms. Miller." Her tone was neutral, devoid of any overt triumph, but the underlying message was clear. Karen hesitated again, then took a deep breath. I want to apologize, truly apologize, for how I treated you, for my narrow-mindedness." Lena met her gaze, her expression softening slightly. "I appreciate that, Ms. Miller. However, my focus was, and remains, on providing you with the best possible legal representation." The tension in the room remained thick, the weight of Karen's past behavior casting a shadow over her present relief. The climax of the story was not a dramatic outburst, but a quiet, uncomfortable acknowledgement of the profound irony of the situation. The prejudiced woman forced to rely on the very person she had denigrated, her future in America secured by the multilingual skills she had so rudely dismissed. The HOA Karen had finally come face to face with the consequences of her own ignorance, her salvation delivered by the very individual she had told to speak English. The stage was set for a resolution that would explore the true impact of this ironic twist of fate. The granting of Karen Miller's visa renewal brought a wave of relief that washed over her, a stark contrast to the anxiety that had consumed her for weeks. She expressed her profuse gratitude to Lena, her words carrying a newfound humility that Lena had not witnessed before. The irony of the situation, her future in America secured by the very lawyer she had subjected to a xenophobic outburst, hung unspoken but palpable between them. Lena, ever the professional, accepted Karen's thanks with a quiet nod. While she acknowledged Karen's apology for her past behavior, Lena maintained a professional distance, her focus remaining on ensuring Karen understood the terms of her renewed visa and the importance of adhering to immigration regulations moving forward. In the days and weeks that followed, Karen's demeanor underwent a noticeable transformation. The entitled bluster that had once been her defining characteristic seemed to have softened, replaced by a more subdued and thoughtful presence. She interacted with Lena and Ben with a newfound respect, her demands replaced by polite inquiries. The incident in the coffee shop was never explicitly revisited, but its shadow lingered, a silent reminder of Karen's past prejudice and Lena's unexpected role in her future. Karen, it seemed, was finally forced to confront the consequences of her narrow-mindedness, the very person she had dismissed holding the key to her continued life in America. The resolution of Karen's immigration case brought a sense of professional closure for Lena. She had successfully navigated a complex legal challenge for her client, fulfilling her duty as an attorney. However, the personal dimension of the case, the unexpected intersection of a moment of public prejudice with a high-stakes legal battle, left a lasting impression. It served as a potent reminder of the human element inherent in the law, the unpredictable ways in which personal biases could collide with professional obligations. Life outside the office continued for Lena. She found a quiet satisfaction in her work, in helping individuals navigate the complexities of immigration law and build new lives in America. The memory of Karen Miller served as a cautionary tale, a stark illustration of the potential for ignorance and prejudice to have unforeseen and ironic consequences. Months passed. Lena occasionally received polite emails from Karen, updates on her work and life in America, devoid of any trace of her former entitlement. There was a tentative tone of respect in her messages, a subtle acknowledgement of the debt she owed to Lena. One day, Lena received a more personal message from Karen. She wrote about volunteering at a local community center that offered English language classes to new immigrants. She expressed a newfound understanding of the challenges faced by those learning a new language and navigating a new culture. Her words seemed genuine, reflecting a significant shift in perspective. Lena read the email with a quiet sense of satisfaction. It wasn't about vindication or triumph, but rather a recognition that sometimes, even in the face of blatant prejudice, unexpected opportunities for growth and change could arise. The case of Karen Miller became a unique anecdote in Lena's career, a story she would occasionally share with colleagues, highlighting the unpredictable ways in which life could sometimes deliver a potent dose of irony. It served as a reminder that judging others based on superficial differences could have unforeseen and significant repercussions. Years later, Lena continued her work, a respected figure in the immigration law community. She remained fluent in multiple languages, her ability to connect with her clients on a deeper level, a cornerstone of her success. The memory of the woman who had yelled, "Speak English," served not as a source of bitterness, but as a quiet testament to the potential for change, however unexpected, and the enduring power of professionalism and empathy in the face of prejudice. The resolution of Karen's story wasn't just about a legal victory. It was about a personal transformation, sparked by an ironic twist of fate and the quiet dignity of the lawyer who had ultimately held her future in her hands. The karma had unfolded in a way that was both satisfying and subtly profound, leaving Lena with a unique perspective on the complexities of human nature and the unexpected paths to understanding.